If you think mass panic can't change the fate of an entire town overnight, wait until you hear what gripped Salem in the winter of 1692. We're about to dive into a story where fear didn't just infect the minds of a few, it rewrote the rules of law and life itself.
That's a jarring image, because the Salem witch trials weren't just a one-off event, they showed how quickly suspicion can spiral into tragedy. I'm excited to break down what really happened, why, and what we all can learn from one of history's most chilling courtrooms.
So today, we're walking through how it all started from mysterious illnesses in the Paris household to the explosive accusations, then to the courts where evidence meant something entirely different.
Exactly. We'll dig into how the first names got dragged into the chaos, why the rules of justice changed overnight, the executions that shook the colony, and ultimately, what finally broke the spell of hysteria.
Stick around as we uncover how ordinary people, driven by fear, ended up accusing, condemning, and executing their own neighbors. Ready to pull back the curtain on Salem's darkest days?
It's hard to imagine, but it all really started with a couple of kids falling ill. Betty Paris and Abigail Williams began convulsing. No one could explain it medically, so the town reached for the supernatural.
And that set off a chain reaction. As soon as the doctor said witchcraft, suspicion zeroed in on those already on the outskirts: Tituba, Sarah Good, and Sarah Osborne. They were outsiders in every way: social class, race, or just not fitting in.
What's wild is how quickly these accusations multiplied. Tituba's so-called confession after heavy pressure only poured fuel on the fire. Suddenly, people started looking around and thinking, who else might be hiding something?
It's almost as if fear needed a face, or three. Once the idea of a hidden enemy took root, it didn't matter how little evidence there was. If you stood out, you were fair game. Let's talk about the court itself, because what passed for evidence in Salem would sound unreal in any real trial today. People could say, "I saw your ghost in a dream," and that was enough to send you to the gallows.
That's the part that gets me. It wasn't just physical evidence anymore. Spectral evidence basically meant your reputation or someone's nightmare could condemn you. It swept up everyone. Children accusing adults, servants pointing at masters, even upstanding church members.
It's almost like the more outlandish the claims, the quicker the court acted. And with each accusation, the fear just grew louder. Suddenly, keeping quiet seemed more dangerous than speaking out. Everyone was desperate to prove their innocence by pointing fingers elsewhere.
I picture a town where every relationship was fraying, trust just evaporated. And once the executions began, those fears turned deadly. In those executions, 20 people lost their lives. And some, like Giles Corey, died in ways that were almost unthinkable. It's chilling that even a flawless recitation of the Lord's Prayer couldn't save George Burroughs from the noose.
The pressure to confess or even just plead was intense. Giles Corey's refusal was both an act of resistance and a grim symbol. When he asked for more weight as they crushed him, it was almost a final stand against the insanity around him.
What really turned the tide, though, was when the hysteria started hitting the powerful. When the governor's own wife was accused, suddenly people realized if it can happen to her, it can happen to anyone.
That forced the system to finally hit pause. The special court was shut down, spectral evidence was tossed out, and the panic began to fade, but only after irreparable harm. So what actually caused the Salem witch trials? Some blame religious extremism, others point to social stress or even poisoned rye. But maybe the real heart of it was a community already living under a cloud of fear.
That makes sense when you're worried about war, famine, or just neighbors you barely trust. It doesn't take much to tip things into panic. Witchcraft became a way to explain the unexplainable and to give people a target for their anxiety.
It's a stark reminder that when we let fear decide who's guilty, logic and fairness don't just take a back seat, they vanish altogether.
Wrapping up, 3 things really stand out. First, fear spreads faster than facts, especially when it's given a target. Second, when rules of evidence are tossed aside, justice collapses. Third, social divides make it all too easy to scapegoat the vulnerable.
And if there's one thing listeners can put into practice, it's this. Next time you hear a wild accusation, pause and look for the evidence before you react or repeat it. That's how we keep history from repeating itself.
We hope this episode leaves you thinking about how easily communities can unravel. and how important it is to stand up for fairness even when fear is in the driver's seat.
Thanks for joining us as we retrace the shadows of Salem. Stay curious, question what you hear, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.